Um, Actually, Lorraine asked me to do a talk on technology innovation in the oil and gas industry, and I'm going to do a little bit of that. But because this is an entrepreneurship class, I oriented it to giving you some principles and tips on entrepreneuring, which you may have already gotten in this course, but these will be from my perspective, in my experience. So anyhow, here it is. On with the show. I'm sorry for the black letters, but there's nothing I can do about that now. Okay, from the perspective of somebody that's been an entrepreneur for 40 years, in the last 25 it's been primarily biotech. Things like the companies that you see, Orchid Biocomputer just went liquid, and my last one was Boston Biocom, which was a company I set up with the Harvard system and got funded by the State Department to prevent proliferation of bioweapons from the Soviet Union. They closed down the bioweapons labs, and I had to create a biotech industry in Russia, and got rid of the State Department after a bit because they were pretty dysfunctional, and brought in Pfizer to help with the funding. But I've done other industries as well, computers, solar. The Toad that you see there is an optical fiber telecommunications system that Professor Prusnall over at the engineering school has developed, the most advanced optical fiber telecom probably in the world. And he's a wonderful guy, and he's going to make a bundle one day. Aerospace is another. I have worked with and for institutions like Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Cornell, Caltech, Rockefeller, Cambridge University, and the David Sarnoff Research Center down on Route 1, and you'll be pleased to know that Princeton is finally getting into the act. There's a consistency of principles for entrepreneurs throughout the stuff that I've done, which I'm going to talk to you about. First, biotech. Biotech, the hardest field of all to...
I think you need to talk a little about your educational background, because you're not a typical technical person. You need to tell them what you studied when you were here.
I get to that in slide 92. Class of 67, by the way. And but the toughest field of all to do entrepreneuring in, biotech, because you start out on day one with an invention, and it takes 10 years and no income, and $700 to $1 billion worth of cash to develop your company and your products on the speculative chance that maybe you'll get in the market and make some money out of it. So very tough. It's a long way to go, and you have to, and that's where you can refine these principles that I'm going to tell you about later on. Oh, Jesus.
Just use the keyboard.
That's what I was doing. I'm not. I wasn't touching anything. Okay, here.
I know. Well, why don't I advance your slides and you go stand in the little room?
Yeah. I'm radiating. Okay. Can you get to slide number, back to slide number 2? Back. It's going the wrong way. There you go. No, that was right. That was right. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Okay. So you saw that red chevron. Huge risk at the front end, and as you develop your company and you reduce the risk, the value goes up. It's a simple paradigm. Next one, Lorraine. And the way you do it is consistent throughout all industries. You raise capital, and you use the proceeds to get to the next valuation level and exit at the right time. Next one. I'm going to go through these quickly because biotech's not the subject. Here's the sort of a generic sequence of how these things go. You start up with an invention, early stage company. It might be a $4 million valuation. You get $2 million of equity. Hopefully you don't get $4 million of equity, because then you don't own the company anymore. So, and you get it to a stage where you get to a valuation level where you can start raising legitimate venture capital. That is the A and B and the C rounds. Get it mature enough where you've actually got something real, maybe proof of principle in phase 2. Maybe you've got a major pharmaceutical company as an ally. You have a veteran management team. and you bring in a substantial amount of money so that you can get to this level. Dave was saying there's some kind of spooky waves going on in this room. And then you go public. And public generally is, in the old days anyhow, was a $200 million valuation, and you bring in maybe 2 digits worth of new cash. And later financings can be very variable, can be anywhere, and your valuation can be obscenely off the charts. $20 billion with no product and nothing in sight, or in a bad cycle, your company can be valued at half the amount of cash you have in the bank. Next one, please. So that's the sort of generic sequence. And there's a way to do that. And it all has to do with getting financing, getting capital. Because capital is what feeds it, fuels it, to get through that development of your company. The key algorithm that you should focus on is creating a story, and you set milestones in the plot. That is a critical path, that very distinct, concrete milestones along the way that if you achieve them, you will get closer to your goal. Then you pursue those valuation enhancements one by one. You achieve the milestones to support the valuation enhancements, and you're constantly pursuing investment and applying the proceeds to those milestones. Things that people used to talk about as being endemic for the biotech industry are really tools that you use to get those valuation deltas. So it goes like this. If you can get to the next slide, Lorraine. Okay. So it's all a game of reducing the cost of capital. You start up here, you're in the lab, you got an idea, a brilliant professor, you find family and friends to bring in some money, and you've written your story. You put your milestones out there to the public so they can see it. You take the initial money and hit that first milestone. First of all, people say, "You're crazy, it'll never happen." But you hit that first milestone, people won't say that anymore. Then so your valuation then goes up when you hit that milestone, and you raise more money at a lesser cost for the equity to get to the next milestone. And then when you get to that next milestone, people start saying, what's going on here with this company and this guy? And the valuation goes up, and you hit that next milestone, people say, holy shit, this guy could actually make it. And that's when you get to the great expectation, the realization, you make all your money. That's the way the pattern goes. It's a staircase. Next one. And I had to put this in because it was very funny. Biotechnology, people think, is a very sophisticated technology. It's this simple. This is the slide that will appear on the screen at the ballroom of the St. Francis Hotel every January at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference with very sophisticated, credentialed people. And that's what it looks like. They have geometric figures, the cartoon looks like they fit, and all of the financial people in the room think that they're PhDs in molecular biology. Next one. So again, the fundamental rule, create valuable expectations and obtain and manage your cash to approach the achievement of those objectives. Not necessarily to achieve them, you approach them, because if you approach them, then you can get out before you have to worry about achieving. So, next one. Okay, so those are the entrepreneurial principles that I got out of being a biotech guy in the hard space. Now we go to oil and gas. Next one, please. I thought we should start, take this so I can, oh no, I've done it. We can start with that prior one. Want to start with the basics of this industry, so we start from the same premise. Are there any petroleum engineers in this room? Good, but you don't know I'm wrong. Anyhow, this is a cartoon of a sort of standard early stage oil and gas formation. It's in the shape of a dome. The petroleum is made in the source rock, emanates up to the permeable reservoir rock. And this is the reservoir. Gas will be at the top. Oil pushes up the gas, heavier than gas. Back. And then beneath it, water, which is heavier than the oil, and it pushes it up. There is an impermeable rock on the top, typically, in these domes. So it's capped, so it can't get out. You stick a drilling rig on the top of that dome, punch the drill down into the oil, and start either gushing it out or pumping it with a pump jack. So keep that in mind. This actually is it's a fundamental formation. It's called an anticline, and it's the dome formation. This is how oil was drilled in the early days forever. They looked for these domes because that was how they could drill it, stick the vertical down there, and get the oil out. Next. This is also almost a cartoon of a drilling rig, just so you know how it's done. You have the drill bit at the bottom, of course, drilling through the rock. The pipe, called the drill pipe or the drill string, goes down, connects to the drill bit. It goes up into the rig platform and is connected to a device I can't reach above there. It is a four-sided or six-sided pipe called a Kelly. So it's probably 30 feet long. And the Kelly goes into a bushing that goes into the rotary drive. And the rotary drive catches the Kelly. The pipe is connected to the Kelly. The Kelly goes into the rotary drive. It's geometrically configured so the bushing catches on. And the rotary drive turns the Kelly, which then turns the drill pipe and does the drilling. At the top of the Kelly, you see what's called a swivel. That has to be a swivel because it's got to turn around, not wrap around itself. And the traveling block lifts up and down to take the pipe up and out. What happens when you drill down 30 feet? The size of these pipes are 30 feet. So you drill down 30 feet or more. And the Kelly, by the way, slips down through the bushing and into the hole. And then it's time to put another 30-foot section in. You lift up with the draw works. You lift up the pipe till it just comes out of the hole. It's grabbed on by big metal tongs. It's held there. The Kelly is unscrewed, lifted up. Another pipe comes out of something they don't have here called a rat hole. It's a pipe sticking up like this. It's hooked on to the drawstring, lifted up, put above the pipe that's out of the hole, screwed on. Then you lower it down. You screw on the Kelly, and you're back in business rotary drilling. One other thing very important is mud. What happens in these rigs is that mud is pumped through a hose on top of the swivel, goes down the pipe, and all the way down to the drill bit, comes out the drill bit, and then it comes back up the hole, taking with it the rock cuttings, because if you didn't get rid of the rock cuttings, it would just grind to a stop. It also lubricates and cools the drill bit. Next one. So I've talked about most of this. We talked rotary drilling, the bit and the drill pipe, mud, the casing. Oh, can you go back? Very key part of the whole process is after you drill the hole, you take the drill out, called tripping. Take the drill out and start putting in casing. These are steel pipes that go down on the side of the hole. Then cement is pumped through this pipe that's about 8 5/8 inches in diameter. The cement is pushed down and pushed up through the side of the well, and that secures it, secures the casing to the well hole, and also insulates the groundwater from anything going on in the drill. So, casing. Next. So that's what goes around. Oil, and for many years and decades, would go up the well, straight up the well bore, and then if you didn't have enough pressure in there to drive up the oil, you'd get a pump jack on those teeter-totter-looking things you see in the roadway with the hammerheads that pump the oil out. Next. Yeah, here's the examples of the drill bits. This one, the third one from the left, is the old rust belt workhorse these days. The one that's next to it on the left is a directional. It's bent a little bit so that you can start at an angle when you start going toward the horizontal. And they get more sophisticated. These things now have high-tech metals in these grinder spots and sometimes industrial diamonds. Next. It's a fancier picture of these things that Spencer found for me. Next. So let's get into a little bit of history. Mid-1800s, people found this gooey black stuff coming out of the ground in northwestern Pennsylvania. Edwin Drake was engaged to drill a hole down to see if they could get more steady flow of this stuff, and discovered oil in Titusville, Pennsylvania. At the time, because they had now had petroleum and it could be refined into mostly kerosene, it was mostly used for kerosene for illumination purposes, displacing whale oil, which was the common fuel for that purpose in those days. And of course, before whale oil, they were just candles. So in comes the kerosene lamp, and then of course the automobile and internal combustion engines, giving rise to the demand for gasoline. Well, gasoline was in such demand that people drilled for oil in every dome they could find and pumped and pumped and pumped. They were getting dry. When you do those kinds of wells, the recovery rate is very small. If you hit oil, you could only get 20 or 30% max out of those wells. So there was innovation back a while ago from Forest Oil, who figured out that if they drilled a separate hole next to the oil well, that they could pump water down there and force more oil up, because water was heavier than oil. But that didn't stop the great oil fields in the United States from getting drained. The Permian Basin in West Texas was a very robust place for pumping, getting oil out in the 50s, 60s, early 70s, and it just ran out. There was oil down there, but they couldn't get to it. Can you go back? Oh shit, you saw the picture too soon. Okay, all right. But so we were out of oil. We went to the Middle East, which had abundant oil. The rock was very porous, very easy to get out of those wells, and we became very dependent on the Middle East, as you know. And then in 1973, 40 years ago to this very day, November 5th, 1973, the Arab nations decided to embargo the U.S., cut back 25% of production, and effectively strangling the Western world, and not only shocking people at the gas stations, but also changing the economic fundamentals of the globe, which was the case up until very recently. We were in desperate shape and going to be even more desperate. People were talking about the oil peak. We're not going to have enough in there to keep us going. There was one fellow, though, in Texas working the Barnett Shale by the name of George Mitchell, who said, I know there's oil down there and I'm going to get it. And he tried one way, tried another, failed, tried again. People laughed at him, called him names. You can't do it, you can't do it. One day, he figured out how to do it. He persisted, and he did it. He figured out how to get to that gas, that oil that was trapped, that nobody thought you could get to. Mitchell did it. Innovation, quite an entrepreneur, and he conforms to some of the principles that I'm going to talk to you about a little later on, and he led to a revolution, not only in oil and gas, but in the U.S. and the world economy. Okay, next. So you hear a lot of hoopla about this notion of fracking. What is it? Cliched a term these days. Everybody says, fracking this and fracking that, and you're going to pollute here, and can't do this, and it's going to shake the earth. So what is it? Literally, fracking is hydraulic fracturing of the reservoir rock, which I showed you before, to increase the surface area to permit the oil and gas to drain out of it. So what's the big deal? And people have been fracking since 1948. They've been fracking in vertical wells. You break through the rock on the side. But they've been doing this since 1940. So what's the big deal? The big deal is directional drilling in horizontal formations. Directional drilling and hydraulic fracturing in horizontal formations, which produces, next, ta-da, limitless effective production. And we can talk about limitless if you want to get into that a little later. Next. So here's a cross-section, geological cross-section of the Bakken Shale in North Dakota, which is now one of our wealthiest states, under 3% unemployment. And you can see from this, I think the top map is a Google, but the rest is cartoonized. You drill down a distance of 7,000 to 14,000 feet vertically, then go sideways to pick up the oil-rich reservoir streak, which, as you see, is not a dome. It's horizontal. And if you go straight down into this, you're not going to get much out of it because the stuff is in the rock. And then you can do multiple wells from the same site, as you can see here. And so you send the pipe down 7,000 feet, go sideways into the shale rock, and frack it, and it produces the oil, seeps out of the fracture. Next one, please. Okay, we talked about porosity and permeability. The reservoir rock is very tight. It has the consistency of polished marble that you might see in your church, if you go to church. I don't know if they do that anymore, but it's very tight, and you get oil from that marble. It's limestone or sandstone or shale, and embedded in that rock are the organic remains of crustaceans and algae and dinosaurs and fish, swamp grass. But it's embedded in the rock. And sometimes it's not necessarily ingrained. Sometimes it's in little pockets. So that the consistency of the rock looks a little like a walnut brownie, and the walnut being the little pockets of petroleum. We talked about horizontal drilling. And in terms of gushers, we don't do gushers anymore. The oil seeps from this rock. You got to fracture it, more surface area, it seeps. So you can have a fairly productive well where from each of these fractures you extract only 3/4 of a shot glass an hour seeping oil from this rock. That's a productive well. So again, we're seeping. It's like Pennsylvania, except it's way down underneath the earth. Next, Lorraine. Yeah, okay, there we are. Okay, so vertical, 7,000 to 14,000 feet. Then you start diverting it. And by the way, this pipe doesn't take a right-hand turn like this. You have to gradually go. I think it's done, 1 to 2 degrees of arc per 60 feet until you get to a horizontal level. And then, once you've got that horizontal pipe drilled, you send down the impact gun, which is like a gun, and it shoots out effectively bullets that penetrate through the casing, through the cement, and into the rock. And that penetration will be maybe 2-3 inches long. And then you take out the gun and pump in, under pressure, a fracking fluid, which consists of water and proppant. I'll tell you what that is in a second, which is in most cases sand. And then all of these mysterious chemicals that people are so afraid of. I'll tell you, the chemicals, the additives that are put in this stuff constitute about 1% of the fracking fluid. And it's primarily a substance called guar to give the fluid viscosity and hold the proppant. Guar is a legume. It's farmed in India, and it's added for viscosity. But the Indians have it in their salad, and it's all over your kitchen. I guarantee you go in the kitchen, you'll find guar in almost all of your foodstuffs. So that's the mysterious chemical that everyone is afraid of. Proppant generally is sand. It's in the fracking fluid, so that when you fracture and open up the openings, there's something there to keep those openings open so they'll close shut and stop the flow. I talked about the diversion technique and the drill bit. There are new kinds of bits that you can actually steer. The old bit, just the directional fixed bit that was used for many years, to get the diversion, you can't rotary drill because it's diverted and it's too big a space to hit. So what happens is they created a drill bit that the only part that moves is the end of the bit. and the mud that's pumped into the pipe that goes down to the bit turns it sort of a spirally turbine at the tip of the bit that moves it around. Now they've got new ones where you can continue to do the rotary stuff, and it's about 4 to 6 times faster than the old bit. Next one. And this is the new guy over here. Next one. Okay, frac. So again, the perforating gun you put in there, you shoot a little hole, pump the fluids in, and they create fractures. More surface area, more room to seep, get the stuff out of the rock. Those fractures, 2, 3, 4 feet long. So if you remember the Bakken the Bakken cross section, you get 3 feet of this seeping down oil. Once you take out the fluid seeping into this wellbore, on top of this is 10,000 feet of impermeable rock, granite, other tight limestones. It doesn't go up that far. You can't get it through the ground. So just bear this in mind. By the way, this is not a fully accurate rendition of the fracking process because you have to do this in sections. You have a stop here, and then you pump it in, and it fractures, and then you have to put in another stop, and then you fracture another section, and you keep on going like this for a number of times and get enough openings so that you can get those shot glasses to amount to something. Next one, Lorraine. Okay, New World Order, highest level of oil and gas production since 1988. It's going up faster. That's an old number. The U.S. is predicted to overtake Saudi Arabia as the world's largest producer of oil by the year 2020, 7 years from now. We have already overtaken Russia as the largest energy producer in the world. We did that last month. Daniel Yergin, who's the prominent pundit in this space, calls this the biggest development in the world oil market this century. Natural gas price, because of the abundance of gas that this has released, has gone down from $13 per 1,000 cubic feet or million BTUs down to $2.50 last year. And that obviously causes disruptions as well. A very credible figure, the CEO of U.S. Steel describes it this way in front of Congress: the discovery and development of North American shale resources has the potential to be the most remarkable source of economic growth and prosperity that any of us are likely to experience in our lifetimes. Get ready for it. You're right at the beginning of the curve, and you're in a great spot. By the way, when you're going for your interviews, put this consulting company on your list. Get in with Jurgen and IHS in Colorado, and you'll make your careers.
What does IHS stand for?
It stands for IHS Consulting Company. I don't know. So that's his consulting company. And how did this revolution happen? Because of an entrepreneur, and that was George Mitchell. So what's the opportunity now for your young entrepreneurs? Next one. We're in a revolution. As the volumes go up, the prices come down, so the industry has to do things faster, better, cheaper. Absolute paradigm for technology innovation. That's where technology innovation comes from. Faster, better, cheaper. They're needed new alloys, valves, couplings, and bits to operate in the deeper, more hostile environments way down below. Water. The silent partner in the oil and gas industry is water. The obtaining of it, the delivery of it, the recycling of it, the disposal of it. In some places you've got tons of oil but no water, and you can't pump, you can't drill. So water treatment is a huge part of the oil and gas industry and the revolution. LNG, liquefied natural gas, import facilities that we had to bring in gas for our country are now being converted to, I just broke this there, David. Are being converted to export facilities. And we start exporting natural gas, that price is going to globalize. Ours will go up, but the world price is going to come down. The conversion of gas and other hydrocarbons to liquids is a big area for innovation and fortune making. And as a matter of fact, Laura, are you here? As a matter of fact, right here over the engineering school, one of your brilliant engineering professors has come up with a technology to optimize off-the-shelf technologies for converting coal, biomass, and gas into kerosene and gasoline and diesel. And he started up a company in San Antonio. It's going well. The Russians want to roll it out across the country. So a big field, consider that one. Environmental issues, I can't tell you what it is that we have found, but there is something that is in the works now in a very prominent place that will take away all of the environmental concerns and claims that attend fracking. There's no issue with fracking, but there will always be people complaining about it, and this new methodology that we hope to fund, once we get funded, will eliminate those concerns.
Can you pause for a minute and just talk about the concerns that they express about fracking?
I could, but I feel silly doing it because I don't know what they are.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's something new is happening here, because I've been at the site, I've talked to the people, I know what the science is, and there is no issue. In England, they stopped the movement to fracking because they said it causes earthquakes. The rumble underground from these fracks has never been more than the sound of a truck going by your house. So I'm not going to dwell on it. If you've got issues and you figure out what it is that we have to be concerned about, let me know, and I'll try to answer it. But I haven't seen it. And I don't think there's an issue. Honestly, don't. Swear. Okay, and new methodologies to steer the pipe, use of laser, nuclear seismic. Mark Mills over at the Institute, Manhattan Institute, did a great job of characterizing. He said, technology unleashes resources. Resource wealth creates capital. Capital is reinvested in new technology that in turn unleashes resources. And that's what we've got going on in this country. And all of us should thank George Mitchell. Next one. Princeton has a signature contribution to this revolution. Some years ago, not too many years ago, there was a brilliant student at Princeton in the engineering school. And, it all has to do with a now ubiquitous supercomputer that does seismic exploration, data analysis, formation configuration, and reservoir simulation. Princeton kid, he graduated summa cum Phi Beta Kappa, went to Stanford, got his PhD in computer science. And Stanford invented the notion that if you could, you know how computers work, they have linear things that go on, off, on, off, on, off like this. They thought that if you could harness all of the stuff that goes on in a graphics chip, all the three-dimensional stuff and quantum algorithmic activities, and harness all that, you could create a supercomputer on a chip. Right, that's fine. Great idea. However, you would have to be a Stanford PhD in computer science to do input and a Stanford PhD in computer science to read the output. So this young lad at Stanford for his PhD thesis wrote the language that allowed normal people to use this stuff, and even subnormal people like the guys in the financial industry. So they're all using it. Seismic guys are using it. Everybody is using it. It's now an operation which he runs at NVIDIA that makes the graphics chip. And this is a graphics computer. So last year, there was announced the fact that the US now had overtaken China and had built the world's fastest supercomputer. China had the world's fastest. So I called this fellow up and I said, it's called Titan. So I said, have you heard about Titan? He said, you know what his response was? He said, well, Dad, I couldn't tell you, but that's the result of many lonely nights spent for me at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And my technology is 80% of the computing power of that computer, and I built that computer. Ian Buck, class of '99. Next. This is a little bit of his computer stuff. Next one. And this, next. Yeah, I'm not going to get into this. But it has transformed, I guess you'll get copies of this. It has transformed the industry in very fundamental ways, not as much probably as George Mitchell, but it's more technologically advanced. I mean, it's a super thing. Next. Okay, some of the areas I haven't I haven't discussed, I'm not going to get into it because I don't have time. Exploration, a vast universe of technology, sensors, imaging, computers, very technological. Deep Earth sonar to find out where the formations are. Midstream activities, you get it out of the ground, you're going to use it, you got to put it through pipelines, and transportation is a big thing, and liquefaction is midstream, and then liquids processing, taking the butane and propane and ethane out of gas emissions. Peripheral servicing and logistics, safety uniforms for the workers so they don't get burned in blowouts. Feed them, lodge them. You can't find a hotel room in Midland, Texas these days because things are so robust. Midland, Texas has a population of 100,000 people, and they are building in the center of town a 56-story skyscraper. It's so active over there. Logistics, and the other end, what things that are enabled by this. Gas-powered cars are going to be here within the decade. Residential utility producing electricity in your basement. New petrochemicals enabled by the cheaper feedstocks. So we're at the early stage of the cycle, of the wave. So now's the time to get in it and hang on for the ride. Next, Lorraine. Again, the cycle. History throw an opportunity at your feet with the prospect of boundless wealth as your incentive. Pick one of the foregoing or something else you come up with, and then execute on it. Take your conception, put a development plan around it, do a prototype, business plan, get to your liquidity event, and you will be make a fortune. And how do you pave your way toward that? Next one, Lorraine. Is you get capital. You need capital in order to do this. So how do you do that, Lorraine? This look familiar? Again. Next one. The same process you will do in these technology innovation ventures that I told you about earlier regarding biotech. It's the same principle. It is a technology of finance, and the critical underpinning to all entrepreneurial ventures is finance. Next. Ed might disagree with that, but that's my feeling. Okay, so I set about, this will be about 3 minutes, set out to give you some tips on how to get there. For you on the inside, you seek a vision that allows you to set bold, if unconventional, objectives. Vision for hard objectives. Steel yourself with the courage to pursue those objectives even in the face of common discouragement and derision. Mitchell faced that, you'll face that, particularly if what you got is good, you'll face that. And then you got to persist tirelessly till you get to that end point. Because it'll be hard, it'll be long, frustrating, and if you work hard and long and you're frustrated as hell, you're actually getting there. Next one. That's for you on the inside. The methodology on the outside, as I think I described earlier, is you create a compelling story, you elegantly articulate it so as to engage the imagination of an audience of high impact. And this is where Lorraine was going earlier. This is the value of being trained as a poet and playwright here at Princeton, because doing this is what they teach poets and playwrights here at Princeton, and I can attest to it. That's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Not necessarily an economics major, not a physicist. It helps, but you got to get the big picture, and you got to be able to articulate it. And I started a leadership program over at the Ivy Club. It's been very successful a couple of years ago. And in so doing, I decided to write a backgrounder on the existing learning about leadership so that it would all start at the same level. And in a summary fashion, I did that. But I ended with my final tip of the day, which I will read to you, if you don't mind. Hit it, Lorraine. Though the standard literature on leadership and entrepreneurship rarely gives guidance on general skill sets that are useful to assure success, some clearly bubble up. In particular, the skill, discipline, and art of communications are critical. You can have the vision of the symphony of the angels, but if you cannot communicate it, it stays with you, and others will not be joined to its exhilaration. Communication skills are rarely taught in a useful way in this day and age, so pursue linguistics, know how to structure a sentence, and paragraphs, and where to place the emphasis. Be merciless on yourself in adhering to the purest form of diction. Keep a thesaurus in your holster rather than an iPhone. Have a brutal octogenarian Carlyle enthusiast, like Professor Kelly, teach you how to write. If you learn from that Yoda the fine art of writing, you will launch yourself light years beyond your competition, and they won't know what's happening to them. And while you are at it, study the techniques of public speaking. Not only what jokes to tell to get the audience at ease, but also what non-illegal drug pills to take in order to keep you the same way. Most importantly, and this is my most important message to you, use Princeton for the purpose for which it was created. Become well-read. Gain wisdom and insight and the ability to communicate them. Get a liberal education in those areas which will define for you the way the things of this world and maybe the next actually work, so that you can explain it and expand upon them in such a way that people will come to you and say, give me more. Then before you're aware of it, you'll become a leader and an entrepreneur. And then, of course, the last tip is collect a list of your favorite jokes, one of which should not be, 2 muffins are cooking in an oven, and one muffin says to the other, boy, it's hot in here, whereupon the other muffin says, holy cow, a talking muffin. All right, that's it, guys. Now go make millions. We have time for a couple of questions?
Of course.
What time do you close? 4?
4:20.
4:20? Oh, shoot, I should have gone slower.
Well, I kept trying to tell you that, but I think the slides caused a lot of confusion. So
Oh.
I'm sure we've got some good questions from this group.
Yes?
So, the oil and gas industry, from my understanding, the upfront capital cost is very high. How would you advise somebody with an interest in oil and gas to sort of be an entrepreneur in the industry?
The going in costs are kind of high. It costs a lot to drill a well. I'm sorry. So my partner in this exercise is Don Hakes. Don, wave. And next to Don is Cindy Lander, who I've partnered in biotech with for many years. So that's our team. I had a wealthy fellow who was coming today, but I guess he gets stuck with a family office. Now, so what would you say? I mean, an initial going-in cost to do a well, $7-8 million?
7, 8, and up to 15.
Yeah, depending on how you're going to go about doing it. They still drill vertical wells, and they're they're less expensive, obviously. But once you get these things going, these things pump for 20 and 40 years, 20 to 40 years. So, yeah, you get capital there. But I will tell you that. That's for the drilling. There are a whole universe of other ways of making money in this industry. You can buy acreage, let somebody else drill, get royalties. You can buy overrides, you can buy leases, there's secondary markets, so there's all kinds of things you can do. You can go find yourself a group of landmen, that's people who look at title to land and whatever have you, they're out there all the time, and brokers that buy and sell little pieces or big pieces of this stuff, of real estate. So there are many ways of getting into it, not necessarily just drilling the well. And the big companies are kind of on top of it. The big companies, the majors and the independents, are doing a lot of it and most of it. And then you got oil service companies like Schlumberger and Halliburton and Baker Hughes that do the servicing, and then drilling companies that do the drilling. And there's so many separate sectors. It's not all ExxonMobil, we do everything. There's plenty of room for people in smaller ventures around, particularly, again, I have to emphasize, in the technology enabling parts of the industry. So you don't have to go out and put up one of these big wells. A big new rigs cost $9 million. You can just start small and then get to know it. Because there are the people that are doing upstream, that is getting the stuff out of the ground, and the asset companies, they are making a lot of money. And there are all of the big players want to get into it. Goldman Sachs, KKR, Blackstone. There's a company down in Houston called NCAP, Energy Capital, that started in 1984 when the industry collapsed in 1984 in Texas. 4 guys started up a private equity firm to fund these upstream ventures. They have been in business since 1988. Their average IRR, if you know what IRR is, if you're not, ask a engineering guy. IRR, their average IRR is 62%. Their last fund that they just closed, 111%. So all of the big guys say, wait a minute, this is a way to print money and make fortunes. And they are, they're making fortunes. They just raised a $5 billion fund. They had to turn away 3/4 of the capital that was interested in putting in. There are a few of these regulars, and then the new guys coming in are going in upstairs. So there's money everywhere to fund it. Nobody's figured out yet what you're being told today, that there's a huge technology surge like the internet in 1991 and biotech in 1985 going on right now in technology innovation in oil and gas. You know, well, you could concentrate your entire career just on the water side of this and make a bundle and good cash flow, and it's a great business to be in. It's part of the industry, and people don't know it, but here now you know it. This make it faster, better, cheaper. As price comes down, you got to preserve your margins, so you got to make it cheaper, and that's technology innovation 101. As Don said, the break-even point here in this country, because of the formations that we have, the type of rock and petroleum we have, the break-even is probably around $65, $70 a barrel. In the Middle East and Saudi Arabia, because it's so easy to get the stuff out of the ground, the rock is that much more porous, they can get oil down to $25, $30 a barrel and still make money. So it varies around the world. And Dr. Flutis, our engineering professor here, who's come up with the gas to oils methodology, I think has, Lori, what is it? Is it 50? I think his method is profitable, converting gas to liquids at $55 a barrel. So as you come down, go over and get, I think it's called Princeton Energy Innovations, San Antonio, our stuff. Go send your resume over there to that guy. Okay, anybody else? Yes?
Since no one in this room earlier, when you asked if we were petroleum engineers, no one really has experience in this field. What would you say to us about how to actually break into this industry? Where do you get your start?
Okay, good question. You get your start the same way I got my start. I was a biotech guy, right? I've been in Princeton 25 years. I came down to Princeton 25 years ago, and I didn't know what the FDA was. But I graduated from Princeton. They taught me how to study. So I studied it, talked to people about it, asked the questions, wasn't afraid of being made a fool of, but learned it. And I was winding it down. I don't need to do this anymore. And then I got smitten by this bug, and I said, holy shit, here I have to do the whole thing all over again. So I did what I've been accustomed to doing. I got the textbook. I'll tell you the textbook, the Non-Technical Guide to Oil Exploration, Production, and Development. Fabulous book. Norman Hine, PhD. You can, and it's a fascinating book too, to learn about geology and how you do all this stuff. Great place to start. You get a mentor in the industry, and there are a lot of people that made a lot of money and love to talk about this. Nobody's paid any attention for so long that you can find them. And we can direct you to those guys. Go to Texas. Don't go to Houston, because Houston's too big. Everything's big. You can't get a high-level view of it. Go to Midland, Texas. They have a petroleum museum there, where you can see all of the different aspects and the devices and the history and whatever. It's so stimulating that you'll be driven to this industry that used to be looked at as a Rust Belt industry and everybody had dirt under their fingernails. Not anymore. These people on those rigs are smart guys. They're out of A&M, Texas Tech, UT, Austin, Tulsa, and they're smart. And they're all going to make a great career for themselves. But there are ways of doing it. You start studying, man. If you want to learn how to, Lorraine said I was going too fast through these slides, and I know I was, but somehow I thought I had 20 minutes less. And I didn't want her to
Must be daylight savings.
didn't want to have her barking at me for not allowing you to ask questions. But go to the web, punch in something like oil well drilling Kelly system. And you'll see YouTube videos on people taking the stuff up and in and out of the hole and tripping, and it's quite fascinating. and stimulating. And biotech, I get monoclonal antibodies and cure cancer and the immune system and all that. This stuff is fascinating and it's manageable. It's sort of mechanical. It's touchy-feely, but it's also very sophisticated. And the geology is fascinating. It's the history of the world in rocks. It's not even risk anymore. Your risk is, I'll tell you what risk is. Risk is 1998, everybody's making billions on dot-com companies. You say, shit, I'm going to make $1 billion, like one of my companies did when I was at 1999. I said, I'm going to make $1 billion, I'm going to make a dot-com company. That's high risk, because that's the top of the wave when it's about to crash. You get in on something like this at the bottom of the wave, you're going to ride it up whether you're good or not. No, listen, I got to tell you, if you ever have an opportunity to go after and get government money, turn the other way and run. You don't want to do it. I mean, it is incredible. I'll tell you a story that will make you laugh. I won't tell it now because I think even with my abbreviated presentation, I'm not going to have time to finish it. I'll tell you a story that is so ludicrous and absurd about government involvement in entrepreneurial ventures that come to me, I'll tell you the story. It's just hilarious. It has to do with Princeton and a bunch of other things. The government, commercial enterprises, you actually learn stuff and you're challenged and there's that scene from Ghostbusters where the three quacks are coming and get fired and they say, what do we do now? Well, I go in the commercial world. Well, no, you can't go in the commercial world because in the commercial world they expect performance. So if that is the nature of the question, governments, I have found government funding, government process, governments are more attuned to creating activity than they are achieving objectives. And it drives entrepreneurs, not only myself, but others that I know, crazy. So in Germany, because we had this big boom in the 90s, every country in the world wanted to have a NASDAQ and do these kinds of fancy things. In Germany, every state in Germany, Hesse or North Rhine-Westphalia or Bavaria, Saxony, they all set up funding operations for high-tech industries. And so they encourage people to start up these things in biotech and IT, and they would fund them, seed them with government money, and it was a total failure. Because when you got to the stage where the government money ran out, they couldn't function in the real commercial world. So very little got out of that whole system. People think, well, all you need is you need money, but you need to be challenged to get it too. You need to know these rules. I'm sorry. Molly, did you have a question?
I was just curious. I know you said before, just like learning about the industry to break into it, but what was like your journey of turning to biotech, and what did you major in here?
I majored in English literature. I was the poet laureate of my class. I wrote plays for Alan Downer, who was the chairman of the department. Put him on an ant team.
So what made you decide to become an entrepreneur?
Well, what happens, so if you're doing something like that while you're at Princeton, and you do it intensely, like everything at Princeton is done intensely, you come to a stage in your life and career where you have to make a decision. And oftentimes it's a very clear thing. Do I either go the road less traveled and become an artist, but to be an artist you have to be tortured. And besides, when you come out of Princeton, you might have all the skill sets and the functions down properly to write the perfect poem or a good play, but you don't know anything. You haven't experienced life, so you got nothing to say. So I said to myself, and the other road is the road more traveled by. It's harder, it's kind of routinized, and focus, and all this kind of crap. But it does allow you the opportunity to start a family, have a comfortable life, get your kids through school, and all these other things that are very good. Some people disparage them, but they're very good. So you make that decision. You go the tortured artist route. I can tell you a story about that too. I know one of my classmates was the tortured artist. And in the first 15 years out of college, he made a total of $500. He was living in a deserted apartment in New York City with rats and one telephone. And but you make that. So I made that decision to go the road more traveled. It was hard. It was a pain in the ass. However, you find that if you have creative instincts, no matter what field you go into, those creative instincts will sublimate up into whatever it is that you're doing. So in my case, I was a deal guy for 40 years. They sublimated up into the ability to do deals in ways that the deal couldn't get done otherwise. So very creative. And I naturally gravitated toward this stuff because it's all very creative as well.
Jan, I'd like to ask Professor Schau to ask you a tough question or two.
No, Ed, please, be easy on me.
I have a question, I have a reaction, comment. This has been fascinating and inspirational on many dimensions.
Now, from this guy, now that's something I want to take home with me.
And I just want to share a couple of stories that relate to the main point that I took away from this, which is, as you travel through life, you will come across disruptive situations that create new opportunities. And many of us will just keep going right along, but others will say that creates opportunities that didn't exist before in which I can contribute. I've been driving back and forth from the East Coast to Silicon Valley, where I was teaching here during the academic year and in the summers in Silicon Valley, taking different routes in the car. And one time coming from California back to Princeton, I went through North Dakota, and I couldn't find a motel room.
Yeah, amazing.
I had to settle for the presidential suite in a Comfort Inn. You know, it's really expensive. And I walked into the Comfort Inn, and there's mud all over the carpet because people coming to the oil fields in North Dakota don't have a place to stay. They're occupying everything that you can get shelter in. I communicate a lot with my former students. I have about 1,700 of them. And a few weeks ago, I got a note from one of my former students who had grown up in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Heard of it.
And he's writing me from a man camp in North Dakota. These are these temporary barracks that have been built to house people in the oil fields.
Tens and Quonset.
A man camp. And he's there. He's seeking his fortune. So whereas I went through North Dakota and said, boy, if I were 21 years old again, this is where I'd come because there's a lot of opportunity I can contribute to. Since I'm almost 74, I put that idea out of my mind, but I'm living it through a former student who saw the same thing. There's going to be opportunity here. I'm going to be a part of it. He doesn't know exactly what he's going to do, but he's there to take advantage of it. So when you see disruptive change like this, you should think about how can I participate in it and make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you want to make money, okay, here's a simple plan. Go get yourself a food truck or a cigarette stand, go to Midland or go to North Carolina, drive around, feed those workers. And I'm not just joking. Now, you want to learn the trade. You're young. You have plenty of time to fail. If you have the energy in you, go out and put your resume into Henry Drilling Company in Midland, and try to get a job on a rig so you understand all this stuff. You learn the jargon. It's a very important thing for people with potentially large financial careers. You learn the jargon. You can talk the trade. Go to a convention or two, and just network, man, network. And you know, in 1991, nobody had any notion that we were going to have a technology explosion that we had in the 1990s. A couple of guys. But you got to, as Ed said, you got to sort of see the disruption come, but be sensitive to it. There is a technology revolution going on right now in technology innovation in the oil and gas industry, and nobody has said boo. Everyone's so mesmerized by all this stuff coming out of the ground. They're not noticing the fact that this technology thing is happening, and this technology thing, as I say, is going to be there for the long haul when the price of gas goes up and down and all this kind of stuff. And it's a great time to get on the wave early, and then ride it up, and just make sure you jump off and hand it to the dumber money when it reaches the crest.
So you offer internships?
Thanks for saying that, Lorraine. As a matter of fact, I'm working with Spencer. He's got the inside track, but
Although his PowerPoint days may be
I'll look into this. But I think that what we're thinking about is maybe getting some of you young Turks to maybe participate, do some analysis for us, and participate, maybe get involved in this.
This has been great.
Thanks. Thanks, Ed.